Okay, so I'm back real quick. The rain checked out that situation. It's mostly over now, but I went ahead and finished that third color and parked. So I'm parking going horizontally. So I'm parking in the first row here in this new section going this direction instead of this direction, because otherwise, like you saw with that first color that I parked, that X is way over there. That would have been a really long stretch from over here all the way to over there. So since I'm working horizontally, I'm parking into the leftmost row of this next section. If I was working downward, I would park in this top row or the nearest of that color to the top. But since I'm going this direction, I'm parking in the first column or the closest one to this side. So let's pick the next color here. Hopefully that made sense. So I've got 3 colors now parked over here. So now the next color is this dark red, and that appears to be color 613 here. So I will grab that real quick and get that ready and be back in just a second. Howdy everybody, it's Amy from Amy's Sparkly Diamond Painting. How are you doing today? I've got a video here that's about cross stitching. That's why I've got a cross stitch here in front of me. And this video, I'm not sure exactly when you're going to get to see it, because it's going to take me a few days to work on various parts and do some editing to get this video to work. But I thought I'd at least get it started here on this Sunday evening. So welcome into my channel. If you're new here, welcome. If you're hanging around for a while, I appreciate you guys continuing to support me and watch my channel. I do mostly diamond painting, but I have ventured back into cross stitching once I discovered these stamped cross stitches from overseas, from China, and I really enjoy doing these while sitting on the couch and watching TV. So I've had some requests. I've talked about parking threads, and I've had a few requests about tutorials related to parking threads and how I work on my cross stitch, especially the larger cross stitches. So I'm gonna show on this one a little bit about parking threads, and depending on the length of the video, I may end up showing you how I work on a really large piece as well. So if you're interested or into cross stitch, this video is for you. If not, that's okay. I'll have other diamond painting content coming as well. So let's talk about parking threads and this particular design and why I've picked this one. So this design is one that I've opened and shown on my channel before. So this is the image here. It's kind of a junk journal type style. We've got the butterfly and the flowers that are overlaid on top of this piece of paper that has little scrolls in the corners and some cursive writing on it. This is a rather long cross stitch here. This one, I'm looking for the size, 103 by 363 high. That's the stitches. Or here we go, 29 by 89 centimeters long. So it's pretty long. Now I have worked on part of this because I wasn't sure that this design was going to work out very well, so I wanted to do just a little portion of it to test it out. This does have 50 colors. I think the brand is Yishu, which you can find on a few different websites. I think I got this one either on GBFKE or Outdoor Tide, I think, one of those. Biggest Craft and 7 Great. There's a lot of these cross-stitch companies out there. And Art Create Love is one of the latest ones that's been sending me PR packages. They have not this brand because they only specialize in the more premium brands. It's the Joy Sunday and Spring and Mona Lisa. The Yishu is a little bit more of a budget-friendly, kind of like Huacon, only Yishu has a few more colors than Huacon typically does. So I try to stay away from Huacon most of the time now, unless they have a particular picture that I just can't get anywhere else. But Yishu usually runs about 50 colors or so. So here's the section that I've done here. You can tell I've also done a little bit of the corner to test it out. So this is the back. And one of the things I really like about stamped cross stitch is you can move around. There's no counting involved. You just follow the pattern that's on your fabric here. So you can jump around and stitch whatever parts you want. So very different from counting cross stitch, where you'd have to work from the center and count outward, or work from a corner and kind of work across. So here is how it compares to the part that I have done. It's not the best translation there, but I knew it wouldn't be perfect with only 50 colors. But the red here is a little bit dark compared to the detail that you see on this image, and also the handwriting on the background part, that's just not going to show. But I knew that when I got this. There's one of the corner scrolls here, that's this corner scroll. So it does try to match up a little bit there, but it's not going to be perfect. But I knew that going into it, but I think it's okay enough that I will keep going with this one. But this is a good one to do a little video about parking threads and why you'd want to do that. So there are different methods for cross stitch, and there are tutorials. I'm going to grab this needle. Well, I see it there because I'll put it up here so I don't lose it. So there are a couple different ways you can work on cross stitch, and one of those is the method that I first learned, that I knew and have done most of my life, and that's called cross-country cross stitching is what it's referred to. And that's where you take a color, fill your needle with the threads, and just work on that color all across the area until that thread is too short, and then you end it off. So that's cross country. So like for this area here where it's all the same symbol, that's a good area for cross country, where you just start a thread, use it up, and end it. Now for high confetti areas, and that's why I'm looking at this corner here and why this one is a good example to use for parking. Parking threads is a more systematic way of working on a cross stitch, and it's really good for high confetti areas, or areas where you have a lot of color changes in one small area. So this is a scroll up here, and then this is the butterfly right here. So you can probably make out some of that, and then this is just background. But I thought this corner might be a good place to show you kind of the idea of parking threads. So the way you would work parking threads is you would start with the first stitch in the corner, and you would stitch that one with the color that it is, and then you would park that thread where you see the next one down on the next row by sticking it in like the bottom corner of where that next stitch is for that color. And then you pull your needle off and just leave the thread hanging, and then you work the next stitch in the row and go across until you're done with that one, and then you park it on the next row, you poke it through, pull your needle off, and then you get the next color, and you work systematically across the row. And then when you go to the next row, you should have that color sitting there waiting to do that next stitch. And then you just keep adding in colors as you need until the whole little section is done. Now you can choose different sizes of sections. So instead of doing like a 10 by 10 square, you could go 20 by 20, 30 by 30. Then you're getting into cross country though when you get much bigger. But you would systematically complete each square going down or across or diagonally until it's done. And you can see kind of the image coming to life a lot better that way, but it also helps you deal with all those different color changes without having to stop and start threads over and over. So if I were to do more cross country, there's only a few little X's here, and then I'd end the thread after stitching only a few stitches, and then I'd have to find, I'd have to store it back on my floss things and then pull it out again later and start and stop and start and stop. Sometimes you can also hear the term pin stitching. That's where you stitch like one stitch of that color and then you have to end it. Now, stopping and starting is a little bit easier on Ida cloth, but it can be really tricky on linen. So mostly you see parking methods shown on videos where people are working on, say, heaven and earth designs on really high count linen, where you can't really tuck threads that easily. And it's usually used on counted cross stitch. You don't see the videos very much on stamped cross stitch. Part of that is because a lot of cross stitchers don't do the stamped cross stitch. They do counted cross stitch, but I prefer the stamped. Now I find it more relaxing. So I thought I'd at least try to demonstrate parking and why you do it with a little section on here. And one of the main reasons why you would want to do it is to keep all those threads handy without having to stop and start and stop and start over and over again, especially in an area with high color changes. So when you park the thread, it's kind of stretched across on the back here, and I'll show you some of that. Then you stitch the other stitches over the top of that thread. It kind of secures it so you don't have these long threads. I've got a few longer ones here on the back because you stitch over them with the other colors as you're working. So it does make the back a little bit thicker, and it can use more thread, so you don't get too much extra. I don't think with these kits. You do probably get some extra, but I did go ahead on Amazon and Temu. You can buy an entire set of DMC floss for like 30 bucks. And I recommend the Temu ones. It's not the highest quality. It's not like DMC threads that we get here in the US. But it's good enough. I mean, that's what they're using on these kits to make them as cheap as they do. So it's the same general floss, but they are DMC coded for the colors, but you can get an entire 420, I think, color set for about $30. So that way you have some spare if you were to use this sort of method, or any method really, and run out of floss on one of these kits. You'd have it handy. Or if you don't want to store that much floss, it's pretty big bag, then you can just run to your local craft store if you do run out of a color and just buy a skein of that color that you need. So they do sell it at Walmart, Michael's, Hobby Lobby. They do all sell the DMC floss, but I did notice at Walmart supply is pretty small. They definitely don't carry all the colors anymore, so you might have more luck at a craft store or online. So I'm just looking at how these threads are a little bit twisted up. So I have mounted these on a ring because these are what are called floss drops, and that's one of the signs of one of the cheaper or budget-friendly kits, is that you have floss drops like this instead of having them on a card. So this, I have them in DMC order, so I can flip through and find the right color and then start working from there. So why don't we just stop talking and start showing? And I may have to time lapse some of this in order to get enough done here, but I'm gonna start here in the top corner, and that symbol there is that X, and you have your key here on the side, but you also have it on your paper chart. And this one is 50 colors, and sometimes I have trouble telling which color some of these are. That looks like kind of a dark blue there, because there are different colors of X's. So that's a medium blue. I think it is this one, 898, number 27, but I'm gonna go ahead and look through all the symbols here and make sure that that is the one. So I believe it is that one. Yes, it must be. So our first color there, that first X, is color number 27, which is DMC 898. And this is 11 count, which means 3 strands. So I'm going to go to color 898 here, and since they're in order, it's pretty easy to find. I already have a strand here ready from when I was working on the other corner. I've already used this color before, so this looks like 3 strands here, but I will double check. I like to separate them individually, and you just kind of pull it through. There's one. And I like to separate it and put it back together because that way it lays smoother and has better coverage on the fabric instead of, and there's the other end, instead of when it's all twisted. Because when it's all twisted, your stitches won't look quite as smooth or as neat. So I do like to pull out each thread individually and then put them back together, and that makes a thicker, smoother thread to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and thread this one. And I'm going to have to start up here in the corner without anything, without any previous stitches to secure it. And there are several ways to do it. And I'm a little paranoid about stitches coming out, so I don't use a lot of the methods that you see on videos. What I do instead, okay, I'm gonna just temporarily use this needle to show where I am here on the back. Normally I don't do that, but since this is on camera that I'm trying to do it, it's a little bit different. So if you look at Ida cloth, it has an alternating on the back. You can kind of see we've got vertical threads here that stick out, and then horizontal for the next one, then vertical. And so what I like to do is go back far enough and grab and tuck under a few of the verticals like that, and then pull it across. So it's almost like pulling through previous stitches, but since we're just starting this out and there are no stitches, I like to do it this way. Now you'll see a lot of other stitchers out there will pin the thread by poking through the middle and other things. I do that sometimes. I do that for smaller areas, but for this example, I'm just going to go ahead and do it this way. And then that thread will get more secured in as I do more stitches. And I'm not too worried about this area. This is a very dark color. You wouldn't want to do this with a dark color behind lighter stitches. So I know this area is going to be somewhat dark because this thread is, because it's kind of halfway through that stitch or through that little square, it could show on the front. Sorry about that. I'm trying to get the camera to focus here. I may have to just keep this in one spot and hold it kind of close here. So I'm going to start here with this first stitch. So I'm going to stitch this one and not pull too tight there. And I did cut this floss in half. I do like working with shorter ones for this method and not get too long here. But I'm going to just do that stitch fully. Just do the full X there. Now for true parking method, you would look down the row and do the next one at that row and then stop for that color temporarily. But I like to work on 10 by 10 squares before I park a thread. But this first, okay, yes, that'll work. Okay, I was making sure this would work in this little corner. So I'm going to go across here and do this one. And this does indeed use more thread. That's why you want to have a way to get spare thread in case you run out. The blurriness, it's hard to stitch without moving the fabric too much to make my camera happy. Okay, so I'm going to the next row in this 10 by 10 square. So I'm not looking beyond that, just this square. So the real method for parking, the exact method, would be that I would stop using this color right now. I would look for where it goes in the next row, and I would poke it through the bottom corner there of that stitch, pull it out, and let my needle go. And then just leave this hanging like that. So now I go to the next color on this row, and that looks like a dark green diagonal line with a yellow background. Yes, that does look like yellow on here. So that's color 779 is the next one. So I'm not going to start that one the same way because I've already got a mess going on there with all that one with the first color. So I'm going to show you the other method, or one of the others. There are several ways, and this is one that you probably see more often with a lot of other stitchers. So this one, it has the top threads going vertical on this stitch. So I'm going to poke through here. It's hard to do with my right hand. I'm actually left-handed. So I'm going to poke through that vertical thread there. Just that one. Now I could do more if I wanted to lay it across the top of several stitches. But I'm just going to go ahead and do the one and then pull it until it's almost to the end there. And this one looks like I got them slightly uneven, so I'm going to go ahead and trim these threads really close here. So I'll trim it a little bit more here in a minute. So I've got them somewhat close there. Now I'm going to take my needle and pierce through the middle of this stitch here, like this, and poke it down through. This needle isn't very sharp. This is probably not the best for this method. So I've poked through the middle of that stitch, and I'm just going to do just a little tiny stitch like that. And now I can trim that floss even closer here. And now I do my stitch. So that is pretty secure on there. I'm pulling on it and it's not coming out. So that little tiny stitch is holding my thread now. So I'm going to get going here and go ahead and stitch that X here. And now I've stitched over the top of that little end as well. And that thread shouldn't go anywhere, but like I said, I'm a little bit more paranoid about my threads getting away, so I tend to secure them a little bit more than that, but I thought I'd just show you that example. Okay, the next one is that same color. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch that color. And now I'm looking, and on the row, there's the next one. So I'm carrying it across, and I'm stitching that one. And this is where a cover minder or needle minder is handy, because when you have several of these going, you can put a magnet on them and hold them off to the side so that they're not in your way. So now I stitch that one. Okay, I've got all the ones of that color on that row done. Now I go to the next row and see the first one is there. So I'm going to park my thread by putting it in the bottom corner of that stitch and pulling it out, pulling the needle out. So now I have two parked threads here waiting for me to need them again. So by parking in the bottom corner every time, you always want to pick the same spot to park, the same part of the X. So I always work bottom left to top right, and then bottom right to top left typically, or upper right to bottom, or upper left to bottom right. So you want the first leg to always start in the same spot, so you want to always park your thread in the same spot for each stitch. So for example, I'm always going to park on the bottom left hole. And that way I know that I have the right color. So that's why it's done a lot in counted cross stitch. So you would know that the next stitch is this color. Of course we know because it's already stamped on there. But that's what parking threads is all about. So now I'm going to do this next one here, which is that red, dark red line across there. So now I'm going to put this one on my needle, and I've got to start this one. So you can get the idea of how padded this can be in the back with so many threads, but otherwise, the other method for stitching is that you'd have to stop and start the threads. Anyway, this needle is actually slightly bent. Not the best needle. I think it's one of the ones that came with the kit. I should probably start using this one. So, our next stitch, we got 2 in a row here of that red. And I think I'm just gonna go ahead and tuck across the back because I will be stitching 2 stitches over it, and that'll help hold it. So I'm gonna do it the old-fashioned way, and I'll trim that later. So I'm going to stitch now these 2 stitches with this color. And I can do like the half cross and then work my way back, or you know, whatever technique you want, but in this case I'm just going to do the full X for each one here. And there. Okay. So in that first row, that's it for that color. Now I can look down in this 10 by 10 square. I don't see this color on the next row or the next row. I don't see it until down here. So I'm going to park this thread in this hole at the bottom left corner of that stitch. So we will get it ready there and then let go and pull the needle out. So now I have 3 parked threads. Now this is the method that a lot of people use for those high detailed heaven and earth designs, but I do a modified version of parking. So in just regular parking, I would continue on, do that color, then that color, then that color, and only do it in this row, and then leave them hanging for the next. What I do with parking though is I will work a whole 10 by 10 section with one color before I park, and then I'll just park in the next section. So for example, instead of stopping this one as I did on the second row, I would actually do all of that color within that 10 by 10 square and then park it somewhere in the next square that I'm going to be working on. So let me go ahead and thread this needle back on there. So instead of parking on that second row, I would go ahead and do that stitch. And then look at that 10 by 10 square and see that there's another one right there. So I do that one. And this is why I need to like edit this video and take a little more time, because I'll probably do some of this time lapse or do it off to the side and then stop and restart and show you where I'm at. So I'm going to hold these out of the way here and keep going downward. This is why I do it a section at a time, because all these threads can get in the way. And if you have them hanging down in a different section, it's not as bad, I find. So there's another one right there. And there's 2 more. Here. Hopefully it's not getting too blurry on you. That's the other issue trying to do this on my little camera. I may have to borrow my hubby's GoPro camera and see if that works better, if this continues to be too blurry here. Okay, so those two, looking down, there's another one right there. So I'm just carrying it across the back, doing all the ones in that 10 by 10 section. So it's a very systematic way of stitching instead of just kind of moving all over randomly. And you can do a mix. You don't have to do this if you don't like it. You don't have to do it for an entire piece. You can just do it in high confetti areas if you like. Okay, so I've done all of those X's in this 10 by 10 section. So where am I going to park? Well, I can go either horizontally to this one or down to this one. So I think I'll go down and do this square next, because looking horizontally, I guess I could. There's 3 more there. So if I wanted to do across the top, maybe we'll do that. Because going down this one, because it's a vertical design, it would take a long time for me to get to the bottom of this row. So I've done all of the ones of that color. Now I'm going to take over here and look at this section, and I see there's one down here on this next square. You see that there? There's one there, and there's a couple up here. So if I were to do this really systematically, I would take this one, I just finished this stitch, and I would poke through here at this one and park it all the way up here. So that would be a really long stretch for that thread. Or, since this one is closer but still in that next section, I think I'm going to go ahead, even though it's not the top of the line, I'm going to go ahead and park it with this closer one so that the thread use is not as much. So I see this one is the closest one in that next square, so I'm going to put my needle in that bottom left corner and pull it through and just park it. And then when I'm ready to do this next section, I'll have it here waiting for me. Okay, so this other color here, hopefully this is making some sense to you, but you're probably wondering why in the world. That's what the back looks like. So I'm going to do the other stitches, and I'm going to cover up that, and as I do the other rows on this one, all of these extra things will be covered up as well. But I won't be stopping and starting as much. So that is the advantage. And it's also just a very systematic way of stitching. If you're not sure where to go next, or if you're afraid of missing individual stitches of different colors, sometimes you can have, because it's printed canvas, you can kind of miss some stitches and have them hidden there where it looks like you've done them but you haven't. So I'm going to go ahead and do this thread the way I normally park, and that's to finish this color across the entire section here instead of row by row. So that's why I'm doing those two that are next to each other before I go on to the ones over here later on in the second row. I'll do those two. And then these two look pretty close, and I'm gonna go ahead and go across and then back rather than doing all the X's individually, because I see more down in this area, so I want to end on that side. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump up here and grab this one. Doo-dee-doo-dee-doo. I hear my hubby's TV in there. I'm cooking spaghetti tonight. So I've got some sauce simmering. Having a heck of a time trying to get the needle to poke through on that one. This isn't the best needle. I should swap it out there. So do this one. Don't worry about these over here, because that's in the next section. Just gonna focus on this 10 by 10 square. And if you do like to jump all over the place, or you get frustrated seeing stitches causing you to do that, then you might actually like this method better, because you just work that section. Go down here and grab this one, because it's just sitting there begging to be stitched. And pull this out of the way. Work my way back toward where I started. And finish doing the little X's on here. And you'll notice the top layer of my stitches is all going the same diagonal. So you want the top leg of your X to always be laying on the same diagonal. That'll keep your stitches looking smooth. So there we go. There we go. Hopefully you can see this, and I'm sort of staying in camera. Okay, so I've got some more down here. So I will do this one. And a 10 by 10 square, that's 100 stitches, so it's a pretty decent area. Now some do 10 by 20, you can do that as well. Do two at once. It just depends on how many color changes you want to deal with, how many threads you're dealing with. But at the end of this, I will have a completed 10 by 10 square, so I know that I would have stitched 100 stitches. So it also helps you with these, keep track of how many stitches that you've done in a sitting if you wanted to keep track of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and go back on this row and do the next row separately. A lot of times I can like really reach out several rows before I wind my way back and do the other half of the stitch. So, for me, I don't try to follow too many rules. But I do have some trouble with confetti. I don't like stopping and starting a bunch of stitches of threads. So that's why parking works pretty well for me for confetti areas. I'll get these couple here. And you can also see that the shorter lengths are just easier to do well on camera. So I don't have to pull as far as I would if these were the full length of the thread, which I think they're about 1 meter long. So I always like to cut mine in half for demos and stuff like that. Now when I'm actually stitching a big area like here, I will use the longer threads instead of cutting them in half for that. And it is raining. I hear rain starting. Yay, we love rain. So my hubby just got the lawn mowed just in time, because we had rain before I left for Fort Worth, so our yard was growing quite a bit. Oh, That sounded like a piece of ice, not just rain. I'll have to go check that out. Okay, so I got all of the stitches of this color done in that section. So I think I was going horizontal here, so I'm going to do that for this color now. I look and see where to park. I've got 2 stitches down here and then a few up here of that color. I'm at the bottom, so I'm just going to go ahead and park it over here. So the first one in that color, and there we go. And then this color that I was working on, this is I know what color it is because I parked it at that symbol. So I know this is the red or dark red diagonal. And there are several here that I'm going to stitch in this section and probably end here with this one. And then I'll park it right over there. But I'm gonna go ahead and stop now because I need to get supper going and check out the rain and all that good stuff. So I'll be back later with the section done. All right, so I have color 613 ready here on the needle, which is this dark red. So that'll be the next color. Again, I'm just going across the row here, picking the next color in that row in this first 10 by 10 section. So this is color 613. Kind of surprising that a symbol that dark would be a color that light. But since all the ink washes off, that's okay. So now you can see on the back that I've filled in with several stitches by doing it my method where I do everything in the 10 by 10 square before I switch colors there. So that way I have more that I can tuck underneath. So that one's ready. And it looks like we have just a few stitches of this color. Let me get actually in the camera where you can see what I'm doing here. So we've got just a few here in this little section. We've got one there, one below it right there. It's kind of interesting. I can actually see the symbols much better by looking through my phone camera than I can straight on. Kind of neat because it's almost like a magnifier here. It's zoomed in pretty well, so I can tell the difference in some of the colors that are somewhat similar to my eyes. So it looks like the next one in this section is right there. So we'll do that real quick here. Felt like a little knot, but I guess not. Not a knot. There it is. It felt like it was wanting to knot. And if you do have trouble with twisted threads, the easiest way, yeah, it's still got a knot in it. The easiest way to deal with twisted threads is to let them dangle. So you just drop your needle and let it dangle and it'll unspin itself. There, but if you do my method where you separate the threads first, they don't get twisted quite as often either. So it does take a little extra minute of prep to separate out your threads like that, but to me it's worth it in the end. Okay, so there's 3, there's one more down in this section, and that's over here. So I'll take my thread across, and I would do that. Now in cross-country method, I would just keep going with this color wherever I saw it next, and I would probably go over here and then down and keep going until I used up the entire thread or ran out of symbols of that color anywhere close by, and then I cut it off. But with this method, instead what I do here, so that's all of that brick red color. Now I'm going to the next horizontal section here, and the first one that I run across going from left to right. So that would be this one right there. So I'm going to take my thread here and get it ready as if I'm going to make that stitch, but instead of making the stitch, I just pull my needle off and leave that ready for when I get to that next section. And part of the reason you do this is because you will have longer little stretches on the back, but you cover them up with the other stitches as you go instead of laying it over the top, say, of stitches that are already done. So I'm going to be securing these threads as I work the rest of this square. And that way then they will be covered up and not just long stretches like that. So there's 4 colors now that are ready for when I get to this next section. So instead of doing this one and this one, I'm going to jump over here. I'm going to go left to right to make it less confusing. So I'm going to do this blue color here and kind of work left to right. So this one is most left, and this one will be interesting because looking across, there aren't any more in this square. So I won't be parking that over here. I'll probably be parking it down here. So I'm not going to end it because there's one right here and that's close enough. I'll go ahead and park down here and just have that ready for when I get to that section. So you do have some freedom. I mean, this is do how you want to do it, but you don't have to follow exact rules unless you prefer to work that way. So the blue is color 938, so I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I keep hitting the camera here because I've got it so close down here so I could zoom in. So I got color 938, which is another dark brown here. And I'm going to secure it and do these symbols right there. So I'm going to go ahead and secure it across the back instead of doing the pin stitch method, since I have a lot back there to secure it with. Okay. So now we will stitch all of this blue color. Alright, so I just finished the last stitch of that color, and I look to this direction and I don't see any of that color. So I'm going to go down. I could go over here diagonally to this one, but there are some in this, and if I'm working left to right, I'm going to hit this square before I hit that one. So I'm going to go ahead and park it at that one right there. So I just finished right here. So I'm going to park it in the bottom left hole right there and take my needle off, and now that one's parked. So we're getting that section filled in there. I'll probably do that red V next. So I'll be back when this square is done and show you what it looks like. So stay tuned. All right, I am back again. I decided to go ahead and stitch this whole first square off camera. So that is 100 stitches in that 10 by 10 area that are completed. And we have a lot of parked threads. Now I was talking about using cover minders or needle minders in the cross stitch world. Same sort of thing to hold. I have these 2 rose magnets here, and I just twisted the thread around this one like that, and it can hold those threads off to the side if you want. Now this is a whole bunch here, but you can use the magnets for that purpose, but I don't. And really what I'm showing you here is the more extreme version. What I actually do is a blend. So I will do some cross-country stitching and then some parking. So here's the other one that I just did, the other corner, kind of like this one, that was done just cross-country, and as you can see there are several unworked stitches still. I just took a color and used it until I could not anymore, and then ended it off, but I still have a lot that's not done there, and it is a little bit easier, I think, to miss stitches when you do it this way versus this, where every stitch has been done in this corner. So I have some parked this direction. This was the direction I was working, left to right, but I also had to park some down here, and all of these colors are parked down there because they weren't in this square. So instead of ending them, I took them downward. So as you can see from the design here, maybe I'll show it that way. It makes sense to go downward on some of these colors because the design kind of goes downward instead of sideways there. So as I was working the chart, even though I had everything printed on the canvas here, I was also looking at the chart to kind of plan out, okay, am I going to go down or across as I started each thread? So I would look at it and see, okay, there's more down this way of this color, so I'll probably be going downward with that next color. And that way I would kind of work the direction that I planned on parking, if that makes sense. So I did run into a couple little things to show you. There are a couple stretch really long here, and that's because they should probably be ended rather than parked. And that can happen from time to time. One of them here was this black one. There was only one black stitch in this entire square, and the next one, the next black stitches didn't happen until way down here or way over here. So that's awfully long. So there weren't any in the square next to it here to the left or to the right, and there weren't any in the one below it. So typically, if you don't have any in an adjacent square, you would end it off. So this thread, even though I parked it for this example, I probably would not, especially since it's black. Even though I can't see it behind there now because of the ink, once I wash this and all the ink is off, that black thread will probably show. So in cases like this where you got a really long stretch, it's probably easier to just go ahead and finish it off for another time. So that's what I'm going to do with this black thread here. I just wanted to show you that. And here's the messy back. That's how you can kind of tell. Like this one right here, the only stitch was up here, and then the next one was way down here. So that might be worth just ending, but we'll take another look. So let me go ahead and tuck and end that black rather than letting it stretch across all those stitches. But if I had let it stretch across, it still would have been okay, other than the fact that it was black, because as I worked these other squares, it would have tacked it down. So it wasn't really stretched across that many. It would have kind of held that thread down. Like when I stitch this square, this one would be sewn over, so it won't be just hanging there. But this was another case where there was only one square of that color in here, and the next one was actually beyond. So it was not in this one. It wasn't till way down here. So this one, by the true parking method, should be ended rather than parked way down from where the original stitch was. So there was only one stitch here of this color. So that one probably should have been what we call a pin stitch, a start and stop in just a small area, rather than stretching across like that. So got my needle caught here. Okay, sorry about that. Trying to do this where you can see, but also keep my sanity a little bit. Okay, so we'll end that one as well. And normally you would know what color it was and everything. That's 453, I believe, because you're not gonna do everything and then go back and say, oh, never mind, I'm gonna take that one out, like I just did. I was just doing that for example purposes so you could see. So how many colors was this? I actually counted, and the way you know is because you have all the threads here that you can count. So this was 18 different colors in that square. Of course, I just ended 2 of them, so now we have 16 different threads hanging either sideways or down below. So now I'm going to work this square and go this way, And this is where we start saving time. So the first one will take a while because you have to start all of those threads. So it does take a while to do that first square, but now that I'm set up, I have all these threads that are ready to go. So I can kind of work my way across here now. I can take this first one. I'm trying to do this here so I can show it in the camera. So I'm going to take this first color here in the next row, and that second 10 by 10 square, and I'm going to go ahead and thread my needle. And I know what color it is, or what symbol I should say, because it's sitting in the bottom corner of the symbol. So I parked it in the bottom left hole of the symbol every time. So I know that this one goes with this symbol right there. So now I'm going to go across and stitch all the ones of this symbol in this 10 by 10 square. And then I'm going to look at where to park it. Now this one I'll probably have to end because looking over here, oh, there's one. Okay, so I'll probably park it right there. I was gonna say that maybe there aren't any, but there is right there. So I'm gonna stitch this symbol and then park that thread right here. So since there's only a few, I can probably do this through my camera lens here. And hopefully the focus in and out as I move this won't bother you too much, but you can also see I do stitch in hand. I don't like the weight of hoops or frames. I do have one frame that I use for a really big one because it's one of the big roll frames that has a roller on each end, so it can hold like a long thin one. I bought it on Amazon, and I can probably put the link down below if you're curious about what frame I use. Okay, move these threads out of the way so I can see. So I've got there, 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 and there. So I'm moving toward this square. So by the time I get to this end, it won't be that much of a stretch to park it over there. So keep going here. Do this one. And now you can see how this might save you time and also help keep your sanity a little bit as you're working with lots and lots of confetti. Now 18 colors out of 100 squares there is not too bad. You can have some charts that have even more colors in I mean, technically you could have 100 different colors in one square like that. That would be nuts. But it can happen, especially with some of those heaven and earth designs. So this is why diamond painting is a little bit easier because you don't have to plan threads and all that. Each square is independent of every other square around it. Whereas with cross stitch, it's dependent on which way you're going with your thread. So we're almost done with this color, and you'll start to see why this becomes useful and why some people like it. Now you'll see if you look at this for counting cross stitch out there and look at various tutorial videos, some people go diagonally every 10, like they'll do across this way and keep it at 10 stitches per row, but they'll go diagonally downward. And some people work an entire row before they move on to the next color. So I've also seen where like this color, I would take it and work all the way across before I park. But because I'm doing this on camera, I'm using the shorter threads that are a little bit easier to pull it through without hitting the camera. So I wouldn't be able to go very far. And actually, I was thinking, yeah, I guess in the camera it is. It was hard to tell if that was a triangle or another upside down T. That is an upside down T. And that is one of the troubles with some of these more budget friendly versions of stamped cross stitch is that the printing isn't as good quality. Sort of like a diamond painting. You get some that the symbols are just harder to read than others on the budget-friendly kits. Okay, so I'm holding, because this one is parked over here, it's in the way of the hole, so I'm holding it with my other hand while I stitch that stitch next to it. And there we go. So that is the last, I believe, of this color in this section. It is. So now I'm going to look at this section, and we kind of already picked it out. That is where I'm going to park it. So I'm going to stretch it across here, and you see it's not too long. It's from there to there, probably about 8 stitches, and let go of it. So now I'll take the next one down, which is this thread right here, this brown, and I will pull this one and thread my needle with it, and then I will work that symbol across. And once you finish all the threads that you already have parked, then you'll see what's left that's new colors in this area, and you just keep going, work in that same direction. So this one, I know because it's in the bottom corner, is that symbol right there. So I'm not worried about the DMC number, I just know which symbol I'm looking for. So now I will go through and I will stitch from left to right all of that symbol that is in this square. So I know there are some more here in this first row, so I'll have to move some of these parked threads just slightly out of the way to expose it there. But one of the reasons I like to stitch in hand is because for years when I was stitching, I used to get knots a lot in the back. So I just kind of learned over time to always have my other hand in the back feeling the thread to make sure it doesn't get tied in knots. And that's much easier to do when I stitch in hand. So that's another reason I stitch in hand. You'll see I always have my finger in the back, and it's feeling as the thread goes through to make sure that there aren't any knots, because knots are horrible in cross stitch when it happens in the middle of a thread, because that knot could come undone later, and then your stitch gets really loose, and you don't want loose stitches over time. So that's why it's hard to do this on camera. I'm trying here. I'm gonna have to work on my setup for doing a camera with cross stitch. So I always have that my hand underneath feeling the thread as I stitch to make sure that I'm not getting any knots in there. Okay, so those are both green. That's a red X, so it looks like the next one is way over here for that color. So I am going over a little bit there on the back, but as I do these other stitches, it'll cover up that floss and lay it down. Keep it nice and taut. And I see that there is another one down here, right there. So I will do, actually there's 2 of them there. I will do those 2. Let's see, and this should be the last of this color in this square. And again, I'm about to poke down through that hole, so I'm going to hold that other thread aside with my finger as I finish this stitch. Right there. No problem. And let's see. Oh, there's one more in the bottom corner of that color. So we'll go back down, and then one above it right there. I can almost see the color changes. I think I said that before. I can see the color contrast much better in the camera than I can in real life. Okay, so this one. And that should be the last one of this color in this 10 by 10 square. And with only 100 stitches to look at any one time, it's hard to miss them. Whereas if you're doing a whole area, it's much easier to miss them. So nope, I don't see any more. So now I'm going to park any one of the stitches in the first row of this next section there. Hopefully you can see that. So since I am right here, I'm going to take the one closest right there and park it. So there's two colors done. Now I can just take the next color here on that row, and it is this one, and we know that is the green square. So I will thread that one. And I know one person was asking how you deal with all the needles and could they poke you. Well, you only use one needle, so you let them hang and just rethread your needle. So I like to use a needle that has a big enough hole in it that's easy to thread, because you are doing a lot of needle threading. Okay, so this one is parked bottom corner of this, so I know that this color is this dark green square. So I will go through now and stitch all the dark green squares in this little section. So you see how you start saving time once you get everything started, and then you're just changing your needle. You're not pulling threads out of your thread holder and all that. You're just systematically working down the next square. So this probably isn't quite the best project for this example, because it was really only that corner. You'll see the colors are really starting to change as we move this way. So a lot of these threads are really going to only be parked in this square and this one. And then I'll have new colors coming in, like that dark blue there, as I go this way. Whereas with other ones where this is used a lot of landscape type cross stitches, let me make sure there aren't any hiding under those threads there. And that's where the chart can actually help, is I can look and see, okay, get a quick glance of where on this square those green ones are. So there were only a couple. There was really only one in this first square, but now I've got several, and I'll probably park right over there. So I can get a first look there, and it kind of helps me plan which ones I want to stitch next as I work my way down this square. And I also kind of know where I'm going to end up. So you can look ahead and say, okay, this one's going to be parked right there. That's the first green one in the next square. So I want to kind of work my way towards, I'll probably end with this one so that I can just reach across right there to park. So I will try to keep this in focus for you guys and try not to move it too much, but I do move a lot when I'm stitching, I guess, so it's hard for the camera to deal with that. And so this stitch here I'm pulling it tight because it's this thread, so I can actually tug on this a little bit and hold it while I stitch this stitch above it, and it'll kind of keep that one below it nice and tight while I stitch around it. Like that. Okay, so is that all the greens? That is. So then we had already looked ahead and knew that this was the closest green to this square, so I am parking right there. And that color's done. So now we already have 3 colors done in that square and parked. So now we'll go down. I'm still staying in this first row here. So we'll go to this one. And this one, because it's in this corner, is yellow. So I may go ahead and hold off on the yellow and do this one first and get it out of the way. This one is that orange color. And if I look ahead, it's looking like I don't see any orange in that next square. So I'm going to take a look around here. So this is the orange color here, and it goes to the edge. But looking into the next square, I don't see any of that orange color. So then I'd want to look below, and yes, there's one. There's also one diagonally in the row next after that. So I will park probably over here, but there's also some way back here, but I don't want to stretch that far. So we'll do this orange color here real quick, hopefully without making you too dizzy. And I find oftentimes, except for maybe that yellow color where there are lots of stitches, I find it easier to just complete each stitch individually and work my way across each row like that. So I'm doing kind of up and down columns instead of rows because I'm working left to right. But in this particular color, I already know that I'm not parking over here. I'm probably parking down here or maybe even over there. So I'm going to try to end down toward this direction. So it does help to look ahead a little bit, try to figure out where you eventually want to end up. Like in this example, these 2 stitches are way up here. I'm going to go ahead and grab them and then work my way back down because I'm wanting to head downward. So I will go up here and grab these 2. Real quick here. And my thread is getting kind of short already. It's not too short yet, but this one has been stretched a little bit longer across the back than some of the others, and I've had more stitches of this color. So okay, I got those 2. So now I'll go back, go this direction and work my way down with it. Which means I've got to now decide where I want to park this thing. So I will probably go ahead and try to follow the rule as much as possible and go straight down. So I'm going to park it at this orange square right there. There we go. And this color, there was like only 1. So I'm going to go ahead, that little plus there, that blue plus sign. And there aren't any in this square. And there aren't, oh wait, there's one. There's one there. Okay. So we can do one stitch and park this one so we can get it out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and do that one. I'm going to take it and thread that needle and move this thread out of the way. So sometimes you can clean it up, clean your square up a little bit with all those threads there by looking for the easiest ones, the ones with only 1 or 2 stitches before they need to be moved along. So that was the blue plus. So we did that one, and now we can look down to the square below and park it there, since we already know there isn't one to the side. So bottom left hole, and there we go. That one's done. Maybe this one will be easier. So this is the red V. So we'll go ahead, thread our needle, and we can look over here. There is one down below here, and some over here. Let's see, we'll do these 2 in the square. Are there any going this direction though? And again, I don't see any. No V there, so we're gonna go down again with this one. So let us stitch the 2 red V's in here. So what are some more benefits of doing this? Well, you can see your picture come to life a little bit faster than you can with cross country, because once I get this square done, I'll have both of these done, and the picture will show a little bit better and a little bit faster than it does if you completely do one color and move across and then do the next color, and it can take a bit longer before you really see the picture coming to life. So I think that was the only 2. Now I have a choice here. There are 2 of these V's in the first row, so I can decide to park at this one or this one. And since there are others around here, I'll probably go ahead and park in this one. So I'm going to stretch across and park it right there and leave it. Okay, so now we have just a few left here in this corner, because these are all downward at that square. And there's no rule that says I have to keep going that way. I could go ahead and stitch this one, and then I'm kind of working diagonally. Sort of. I'm doing each square diagonally. If I do this one and this one, I can park this way or down depending on how I work it. So some of these colors have been parking down to this one. Some of these can go across to this one, and then this square will already be lined up with a lot of the colors ready to go. So I was going to save the yellow because there's a lot of it again. So I'm going to do that one last, so it kind of covers up more of the threads on the back. So this definitely isn't the neatest back, and it's definitely not going to save you any thread. I think over time it can save you time though, because you're just threading and unthreading a needle. You're not stopping and starting as many threads. So this color is that light blue slash. So we've got one up there, a couple up here, one down here. Let's see, we're not going to park that one this direction because there aren't any there. So we're probably going to want to work up this way and then maybe back down over here because there are some down here. So this is the direction we're going to park. Okay, now I can decide. I could Parkway over here, but that's a pretty long stretch. So I might do a new strand when I get to that square and work downward. I'll probably park it right here where it's a bit closer. So I will take this one and I will park it right there in that square. Okay, just a couple more. Oof, the blurriness is driving me nuts, so I bet it's driving you nuts too. Let's get this color out of the way. So this brick red is actually a pretty light color here. Let's get this one done. So we thread the needle. And it looks like we've got these two and then this area. And that color is in this square. So I'm going to park it over here. So let's head that direction. So I know it's that color because it's in the bottom corner there. So I can just take it and start going. Make sure I'm in frame there. Gonna do this little area vertically so I can end closer to this square. So I'm gonna go up and down and up and down. And actually, come to think of it, this second row, I'm probably gonna do each stitch individually rather than ending down here because I need to go way over there. So that's kind of, I think, one of the reasons why I like to do a little bit of this method, because I do like to plan and think ahead a little bit sometimes. I used to, when I stitched, used to do the challenge of how could I use the least amount of thread, because I did counted cross stitch. I had to buy all my colors of thread separately, get all those DMC skeins. You could catch them on sale. And I'll tell you how old I was. You could sometimes find them at 10 for $1. That would be a good sale. But you didn't want to have to wind all those bobbins all the time and all that. So I was always trying to figure out the shortest path I could take. So actually what I'm going to do, because I just finished down here. So I just put the second leg down and I finished this row down here. I am going to come up through this hole here. So that's going to only be a couple little squares up. And then I'm going to go down and back up. And that way I'll end a little bit closer to there. So to me, it's kind of fun to try to plan the route with some of this. Now other days not so much. It just depends on how much brain power I have. So right now it's the end of a weekend. So this is Sunday night. So I've had a couple days of not having to think very much. So my brain is wanting to puzzle through some things and think through some things. But maybe Friday afternoons or Thursday afternoons even, not so much. So those are the days where I want to do just plain simple stitching because I don't want to have to think that hard. So that's another reason why having multiple whips is good, because if you want to think a lot, you can work on a high confetti project. If you don't want to think a lot, if you just want to chill, then you can have another project or 2 or 3 with plain stitching, and maybe you feel like rainbows and bright colors. It just depends. And I think I've mentioned it before, having multiple whips with cross stitch is not a big deal, because you just put it in a bag and there's no sticky glue that is trying to cure or dry out on you, or diamonds that are trying to get lost. All your thread is contained on your thread cards and zipped in your little project bag, and it could sit for a year or 2 and not cause any troubles to the project at all. So whips are just a lot easier to deal with cross stitch than they are with diamond painting. With diamond painting, you run the risk, if you have too many works in progress sitting around, you run the risk of causing damage to the glue or wrinkling or all sorts of things that could happen, losing your diamonds. So, okay, so I'm done. Let me double check. Yep, done with the dark red. So I'm going to look over here, and I could park it in either one of these 2. But since I'm ending, it's about the same either way. I'll go ahead and park it in the upper one. And done. So, we just have a few strands left here, or just a couple it looks like. So we have this one here is this dark red X. So I'm looking, and again, not seeing any in that square. So we're probably gonna have to go down. So we're gonna park it right there. And this would probably be a case where cross country might be easier. Just go ahead and stitch the 2 of them. But I'm going to show you the extreme version here of parking. I'm just going to stitch that one and then park it. So it looked like this was the only stitch of that particular color. So we will stitch that stitch there. There we go. Because that's a different color right there. That's a darker color. It looks like that will be the next one. I could, because this one is kind of near the edge, I could go backwards and park over here, because there are only 3. Yeah, I think since I am close to the edge, I'm going to cheat a little bit. And this is why you don't have to be that exact. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sneak it underneath some of these here like that, and take it back this direction, and then park it over here in this square. So that's where you can change the rules a little bit depending on the exact project pattern. Okay, so now we have two more colors here before that yellow. So this is this green. So it looks like several. So we've got some here, some up here, a couple over here, and we can park it over here because there is some more. So we're going to kind of go up and across that way and park it over here. Or, because there's one up here too, kind of by itself, it might actually be better. No, I'll go ahead and park it down there. I was gonna see, because they're top and bottom in that square. See, I could have gone across this way, but then I'd have to back up over here in order to have it near the top to catch that one. So we'll just do these, go up here, come down here, and park right there. So it's kind of like a puzzle. And this thread is kind of short because there was a lot of this color in the previous square. See, this one's going to get in the way potentially, so I'm going to hold it with my thumb there while I poke up through the hole that that one's parked in. There we go. So this thread is actually pretty short, so it may not make it into the next square. We'll see. I did not realize when I picked it up how short it was. So it's pretty short because it's going to have to stretch now all the way up here to get these. But you see how this whole square is really starting to fill in. It'll fill in a lot once I do this one that's that yellow color. But all of these stitches I'm able to do without getting out a new color. And it looks like, because I see that dark purple X, it looks like all of the colors were already contained with my threads that I had parked. So I don't even have to add any new colors. I just wonder if some of these are going to be too short to finish. So this one I will finish, this square, but with all that yellow, that one probably will be done. And I might even need to start a new one. So I know I'm probably making you a little bit dizzy trying to lift it up close enough to my eyes so I can see where the hole is with my camera that wants to keep refocusing. So now I'm going to go down here and grab these couple. And I will go ahead and park it, but really this thread is getting pretty short. Why can I not find the hole there? Hold on just a second. Let me get my finger back there so I can direct it a little bit better. Sometimes I just miss. There we go. And the more stitches around an area that you have done, the harder it is to find that hole there. So that one was completely surrounded by already stitched squares. So that one was a little bit tougher to find that little hole buried in there. Okay, so that's all of the green. If I can get, again, that one little hole. It's being difficult. There we go. I'll just do it that way. Go down that one. Okay, so parking would be right here. So this is the first row of that next one. That one's too far away, so I'm going to park it down here at this one. Voila. But that thread is getting short, but maybe I can finish the ones in that square. Okay, we only have two colors left here. In this one we have this dark purple X, which there are a few of those, and then we have the yellow. So I did not have to start any new colors in this square. I had everything parked and ready to go. So we will take this thread and thread the needle, and now we need to figure out which direction we need to go, because there are some up high as well as down low. So that is the purple X. It looks like we can park right there, so we probably want to end up here. So I'll go across I'll get this one, get that one, go up here, and then park it there. So we will stitch there. And see, these threads aren't really getting in my way too much as I work on them. I just hold them back or hold them out of the way with my other hand that's here. So this one's going to go across a little bit. I mean, across 10 squares on 11 count. You're taking them an inch across, so you do want to be wary of how far across you want to stretch your threads. A lot of times what I would do in real life, not on camera, I'm trying to do this as fast as possible, is instead of just going across, I would weave underneath a couple stitches there to hold it down a little bit better. So there's a couple more up here. Oh, come on, there we go. One more. Okay, and this color is done and ready to park. And if I were doing this again in real life, instead of trying to be exact on my parking, I'd just go ahead and stitch that one. But I'll show you the correct way to finish just that 10 by 10 square, and I will pull that through and let it sit there until I'm ready to work on that next square. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors parked here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. 6. So we have 6 colors parked into the next square. And then we have 3 parked down here. And then we have several, like 5 or 6 parked over here in this square. But this square we're going to finish with this yellow color. So I'm going to go ahead and work that one and be back in a minute. All right, so I finished the yellow here, or the yellow symbol. It was this brown color. So now you can see we have another 100 squares done, and I did not have to add any new colors in. I had everything I needed already parked and ready to go for filling in this entire square. And now we have about 6 colors here parked on this side ready to go. Now that symbol with the yellow, the thread ended up being pretty short, so just for illustration purposes I did go ahead and park it over here on the yellow, but really I'm going to thread this back on the needle after I get off the video and go ahead and end this thread and start a new one when I get to that square. So next I will probably go down here and work this square because I have so many colors here parked, and you know, it does really depend a bit on the design, but this one kind of stretches with those darker colors this way as well as down, and then we get into the butterfly wing there. So I'm going to go ahead and do this square next, and then I can park to this direction or downward, and that way this square will have even more threads ready to go in it once I get to that point. So after I do this square, I may even go ahead and do this one. We'll see how many threads end up over here, and then start working this way, and I might do them 2 rows at a time, and that way I can really see the picture coming out here, especially if I have all 4 of these squares done in this area as I start working this way. So hopefully this made sense to you on parking and why you'd want to do it. I think it's hard to picture until you really see it in action, and you saw how quickly I was able to fill in this entire square of 100, even though there were a lot of color changes, just by having the threads part and ready to go like this. So no needles hanging down, just the threads. They're pretty light, and it is easy to just kind of use your thumb as you're stitching. Of course, I'm left-handed, so It's a little bit easier to see on here for me going left to right, because I can use my right hand thumb here to kind of move the threads out of the way as I'm stitching, but I'm sure it works just as well the other direction. So this isn't for everybody, and it's not for every pattern either. You really will find it's more useful in the high confetti areas. So that was 18 colors in this square, not nearly as many in this one, probably half of that. I didn't count them, but it didn't seem like that many in that square. I think maybe 8 or 9 colors in that one. And then as I get to this part, of course, parking won't make any sense here because it's all one color. So these squares only have 1 or 2 colors in them. Even this one really only has a few colors in it, so it may not be worth parking for that one. But it just kind of depends. You can do a mix depending on the different areas of your project. You can alter this method as much as you want to maybe cover a couple squares instead of just one at a time, or try the whole row technique if you like. This pattern has short rows here with only 103 stitches across, but this one is very, very long there. So it does make more sense to go kind of more horizontally rather than straight vertically, but it just depends. Diagonally also works pretty well. And that's what I have for you here, so hopefully this made sense, and give it a try. If you don't like it, that's okay. It doesn't hurt to just try something, and then you can just finish these threads as you go. So thank you for watching, and I hope this helped. Let me know in the comments if this made sense to you or if you want to see more. Thank you. Talk to you later.